Let's bring in security analyst David Otto. He joins us virtually from London, the United Kingdom. Hello, David.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. Now, let's begin with the horrific incident that happened 24 years ago, especially that was August the 7th, 1998, where hundreds of people were killed in the Al-Qaeda bombing of the U.S. embassies, both in Kenya and in Tanzania. Do you really think the death of this terrorist leader has finally given them closure? I'm asking again, has justice been truly served? Because, I mean, many are still suffering the effects of that fateful day.
And I think I do agree partly. I think, of course, some victims will see the death of Ayman al-Zawahiri as some level of closure. But reminded that, there were so many Al-Qaeda leaders that were involved in that planning and execution of the 1998 bombings in Kenya and Tanzania. Therefore, I think, partly people will feel that, okay, yeah, this is some level of closure, but there's a lot of victims out there, especially in Kenya and Tanzania, who feel that there has been some level of discrimination in terms of some of the promises that were made, for compensation. Others have said, it got to the point where even the 335 million US dollars that was paid by Sudan to victims, was not equally shared. Some US citizens and embassy staff, got about 3 million each. But some of the African, local staff, only got about 400,000 US dollars. There has been some level of discrimination, but more than 5,000 people were injured, and just about 85 families have been compensated so far. So it's not really a closure in that sense, but one leader down, it's good news.
Which brings me to my next question. I mean, it's interesting to know that this is coming under the Joe Biden administration as U.S. president this year, 2022. But let's recall 2010. As vice president under Barack Obama, he and his wife had visited Nairobi to commiserate with victims. And he also made a promise at that visit to look into the issue of compensation for victims. But 12 years later, many people are still complaining the damages have not been paid for. I mean, this should raise old questions on when this will be paid, isn't it?
Yes, it will raise questions. And let's be very clear. I mean, the reason why these victims are asking for compensation from the U.S., it's because, of course, they argue that the Al-Qaeda networks were targeting the U.S. embassies, and therefore the impact, of this attack had nothing to do with them. And, of course, because they are victims, they strongly believe that the U.S. should compensate them, and that's the same passing on of the, of the buck, as I may call it, that the U.S. did with Sudan and accused Sudan of harboring Al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden. Therefore, the payments that Sudan made just last year in 2021 was meant to go to some of these victims. But again, the key question again is, how many victims have been compensated? And, it's still the issue of the majority of the victims strongly arguing that U.S. citizens have been favored. And therefore, some of them have turned to their national governments. Of course, the government is also passing it back to the U.S. So the promise was good, but I don't think, they will see much more than what they've already received so far. Biden may have moved on from that. He will say that the killing of Ayman al-Zawahiri is some kind of compensation and closure enough. But, do the victims feel the same? I don't know about that.
Well, so now that the Al-Qaeda leader is dead, will this have an impact on the fight against insurgency in West and East Africa, especially where these terrorists are known to operate?
I think one thing that has been argued by academics and analysts is that leadership decapitation has its own impact. But, in the case of Al-Qaeda, they established a very strong franchise. They've got Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. They've got Ansaru, which is based in Nigeria. They've got Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan. So, it's a very decentralized terrorist organization. And even the Al-Qaeda branch in the Sahel, which, is very focused on Mali, they do not, very much rely on the leadership, from, Afghanistan as it may. The Somali branch as well does not do the same. So I doubt there will be some direct impact in terms of the operations of Al-Qaeda. There are many leaders, about 4 of them, I think, that may succeed Ayman al-Zawahiri. And 2 of them, perhaps, are coming, one from Al-Shabaab's Somalia and the other from perhaps Algeria. So it's still not going to make any long-term impact. They will simply replace him as he did replace Osama bin Laden.
All right. Thank you very much, security analyst David Otter. Thank you so much for your time all the way from London.
Thank you.